We are live, Ashlee. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? How are you?
Not bad. Of course, we're in slightly different time zones, as are many of the guests I have on, and it's always difficult to know where you are and what's going on. Well, you're in Alabama, am I right?
Yes.
And so you are. Tell us a bit about you, Ashlee, and tell us about tennis and how you got involved in the sport.
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Ashlee. I am a student at the University of Alabama. My major is in news media, minor in political science, all that good jazz. I am a reporter, student journalist. I am currently the editor in chief of 1956 Magazine, which is the first Black student led magazine on campus. And then I'm also a sports columnist for the Crimson White. I was sports editor last year. I have been a tennis fan for basically all of my life. I can't really pinpoint when I started following it. It's just like it's always been something that's been on in our house. My house back home with my family, we're big sports fans. Football is supreme in the household, but we also watched a little bit of tennis. My mom and dad are pretty big Serena fans. They kind of only really watched tennis for Serena. I was kind of the one that kind of dived into it a little bit more towards the end of like 2017, I got more into tennis, but I have been following it for my entire life.
Listen, Ashlee, how is it with tennis and the Black community? I mean, it's a large community and the US is a large country, but I'll give you my take on it with my experiences at the US Open anyway, and compared to Wimbledon. Let's just say that the US Open crowd is a little bit more multicultural than the Wimbledon crowd, and it's one of the reasons why I actually prefer attending it. How does that come across to you? Is it something you would agree with? How is it generally? I mean, do you have many Black friends that are huge fans of tennis, or is it still a largely white sport in the US?
That's a great question. I think Serena has helped it become more of a multicultural sport. Serena and Venus become a multicultural sport because now you see people like Taylor Townsend, you see Naomi Osaka, Coco Gauff, which we will talk a little bit about later on, come into this sport. And, for a while before Serena and Venus, it was very much Lily White. And I think tennis fans it's still predominantly white, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I think with Serena and Venus coming into the foreground, and now we have Coco on the men's side, Francis TFO coming in, African Americans making really good pushes and really good deep runs into tournaments. I think this is really putting this sport into the spotlights of many Black households. I think, like I said earlier, football and basketball reign supreme, and that's the kind of the typical vibe in a lot of Black households. But I think a lot of Black people know who Serena and Venus is, whether they follow tennis or not. And I think now having Coco coming in, now having Francis and what he did at the U.S. Open is going to hopefully bring more people into the sport. I'm always here for more diversity into any sport, really. But
Yeah,
I
me
think
too.
having these characters are here for it.
Also we've got Ange Jabeur, of course, representing North Africa and the Arab world. I think the more we can have, the merrier. I mean, it would be great if we could have some more Chinese and Indian stars as well. I mean, obviously we've had a few Chinese stars on the women's side, but until now, not many, or if zero on the men's. Broad question, big question, Ashlee. I've got another one though, and a very different question for you. Who is Tom Hiddleston? Because I had never heard of him until Friday. Am I showing my age a bit here, Ashlee?
Just a little bit. Tom Hiddleston is an actor. He's actually
Is
one
he
of my
British or American,
favorite
by the way?
actors.
I know nothing. Is he British or American?
He's really popular for MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He played Loki, which is who if you don't know who that is, he
I
is.
don't. I just saw him in a tweet just now. I mean, I saw him over the weekend at the Labour Cup, and I just saw your Twitter feed, and I just saw something about Loki and this Tom Hiddleston. So I thought, let's see what Ashlee has to say.
Yes, he's one of my favorite actors. He plays alongside Chris Hemsworth in the Thor series as his stepbrother, his evil little stepbrother. He's also in theater a lot. He does a lot of theater productions. That's mainly his bread and butter. But he's a big tennis fan. He went to the U.S. Open in 2019 when he was performing on Broadway. Goes to Wimbledon literally all the time.
Okay.
I think he was in Joe Concha's box when he was at the U.S. Open in 2019. So he's a very big fan of tennis, very ardent supporter of tennis. Anytime Wimbledon's around, especially during that championship weekend, you can count on at least Tom showing up for at least the men's final and the women's final, just popping his head out for a little bit and then just going back, doing his little acting things. But he kind of popped out because they're doing promo now, I think, or filming or promo for season 2 of Loki, which is a Disney Plus series that he's in.
I mean, it seemed like everybody in the world, especially the tennis world, knew who he was except me. I just saw him and I thought, okay. I mean, he's one of these people that I would probably see in a crowd and go, he looks kind of famous. But that would be about it. Listen, we are going to get to Coco, I promise, and that'll dominate today's episode. But I just have to say that I came across you recently, Ashlee, through a Twitter Spaces. I think it was on Rafa Nadal. I'm guessing he's the one you have a bit more of a soft spot for on the men's side.
Yes, I am the resident Rafa Nadal fan of popcorn tennis. I know there's a lot more Rafa Nadal fans, but I'm like this ardent supporter. I actually do have a soft spot for Roger Federer. Roger Federer got me into tennis, but I kind of sticked around for the Spaniard from Mallorca. I talk about Rafa like literally way too much. I need to stop talking about Rafa.
You and me both, Ashlee. You and me both. I tell you what I found with guests as well, and certainly myself, is that suddenly you'll be talking about Frances Tiafoe, or you'll be talking about Naomi Osaka, or you'll be talking about anybody, Anjabur, and somehow we all can't help it. We find to squeeze in our favorite player. Frances Tiafoe, you go, well, yeah, I remember at the US Open, Rafa Nadal couldn't work out his serve. And suddenly you're thinking, oh no, I've gone down this Rafa alleyway that I, or you could be talking about Iga and we go, yeah, well, of course, Iga and Rafa are best friends,
Yes. Yeah. I always somehow, I could be talking about literally anything. And then I'll be like, you know what? Rafa won, it has 22 slams now. But like 5 years ago, he only had 14. And I'm like, actually, no one gives a shit about that. No, you're talking about Alabama football. How do we get on Rafael Nadal? What is going on here?
So we'll try to keep Rafa out of this episode about Coco. Listen, I've got a show, and there we go. Look, Scott's showing you a bit of love. Hanya as well. All the old school regulars are in. Ashlee, I've got a show. First of all, I've got to show your picture on Twitter as the first image to at least show a bit of love for Coco. Tell us about Coco, what it is because I spoke to you about this earlier this week. I said, who do you want to talk about? I'd rather talk about someone on the women's side because I've had a few show about the men's side recently. So we need to show the women's side a bit of love. And you said, let's talk Coco. So what is it about Coco? I mean, I have many questions and many thoughts as well to share, but why did you choose Coco amongst many of the different options that you had?
Yeah, so I'll kind of go back to the first time that I watched Coco, which is obviously during that Wimbledon run that she had back in 2019, bursting onto the scene, playing one of her favorite players in the first round in Venus Williams. And I just remember the moxie that she had. She was 15 and she's going against an opponent that she's been watching on TV for basically all her life. I mean, she was an established great before she was even born, and now she's sharing the court with her. And it was kind of a surreal moment. And a lot of people, when they get into matches like that, they tend to kind of let the moment get to them. And she was very appreciative of the moment, but she was also like, I'm here to do a job and I'm here to compete. And you saw a lot of fire in her and a lot of respect for Venus. But I think that match, just how well she played for her age, being 15, being under all of those lights at Wimbledon, whether you're into tennis or you're not into tennis, Wimbledon's one of the biggest, it's one of the Grand Slams. It's one of the more well-known tournaments in the tennis world, outside the tennis world. So having all those eyes on you, playing someone you have idolized your entire life, she had every reason to just kind of fall to the wayside, and she didn't. I chose Coco because she's had a great season, and I think it hasn't been talked about enough how well and how consistent she's been this season. Yes, she won a title when she first came onto the scene in 2019, I think at Linz. And then 2020 and 2021 were just kind of quiet years for her, but she worked the tour, and she got more consistent. She got a new coach to help her work on her forehand, her serve, and she really got down to the nitty gritty, and you saw just how her work paid off. I mean, a finals run to at Roland Garros, a quarterfinals run at the U.S. Open, when every single match she played was on Ash. Every eye was on her. She's just been so consistent and so under pressure, and she's also grown as a person off the court. Finding her voice and speaking on issues that she cares about. And I think her season's just kind of gone under the radar for a little bit. For someone who's been consistent,
she didn't quite have a landmark tournament win. Is that fair to say? Is that perhaps why? I mean, obviously getting to the French Open final, the quarterfinals in the US, some good wins against top 10 players such as Paula Badosa at the beginning of the year. She had a narrow defeat to Barty as well, I remember, before the Australian Open. But she didn't, it's not like she beat Iga to end her run, or she didn't win one of these majors that we just highlighted. I guess, is that fair? Is that why she just sort of didn't quite put her head above the parapet, so to speak?
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why. And then also she had a really consistent season during the same season where Iga decided to rattle off like almost 40 match wins. Yeah. So it's very hard to kind of compete with that. But I still think the results that she got, whether she has a win or not, she won a doubles title with Jessie Pegula, which is where that picture is from. She won a doubles title with Jessie Pegula. So that should be talked about enough in her doubles play and reaching world number one in doubles at the age of 18. It's a monumental stat. So I think part of it's the reason she hasn't had like a big win per se, whether that's at a lower level tournament or at a slam. But I still want to talk about her season because it's just shown just the work that she put in the shortened, abridged 2020 season, and in 2021 it's kind of coming all together now and setting up for possibly a really good 2023.
Yeah. What's her best surface? Because, I mean, when she was sort of skittling people through at Roland Garros this year, I started to think maybe it is clay. When I think back to her bursting on the scene, of course, it was on the grass courts of Wimbledon. And I must say, I went into Wimbledon this year thinking that she would go deep and maybe super deep. But unfortunately, that didn't work out, and we'll come to that shortly. But then she's pretty consistent on the hard courts, as we saw in New York, as well as elsewhere. So I still feel maybe clay is the one where the problem she's got on clay is Iga. I mean, Iga's going to be a problem for everyone everywhere, and it has been for a while. But I do think that the gap between Iga and the rest on clay is a bit bigger. But is it right to say that's her best surface, or what do you think?
Well, she does have she did win the juniors Roland Garros title on clay, and she's had some of her best results are on clay. So I will argue that it is clay. She moves just very well on clay, and the slow bounce that clay gets allows her to set up her forehand, her backhand strokes just a little bit more. It gives her that extra time, so she's able to grind out points. I wouldn't call her like a pusher or anything. She's a counter puncher. She can absorb pace. She can handle the pace and redirect and turn defense. And she's one of the best defenders on the tour right now.
Her defense is insane.
She can turn pace. She can turn defense into offense so quickly, just with one shot, like her idol Venus. So I would argue that clay is her best surface. She does really well on the natural surfaces. Grass, I think she still needs to learn movement on grass just a touch more to get more comfortable on it. But I think clay is her best surface right now, and then I would follow it closely by hard because she's put out consistent results on hard court as well. But yeah, I agree with you. It's been clay for me for a while.
Yeah, but talking of her consistency, I when I was looking through some of her results, and I'll probably share them on the screen right now from this year. What I noticed was there weren't many bad defeats, if you like losing to 115. Though I think there was one that sort of stood out for me at one point, and we'll come to that in a second. It's quite near the beginning of the year. But if we look at the where's she getting to in every tournament, she's losing to Bencic, for example, in the semi-finals in Adelaide. That can happen to anyone, especially on a hard court. She's losing. Okay, Jill Teichmann, maybe that's a little. Oh, this is last year. I'm looking at the wrong year. There we go. I thought that was a bit strange. Jill Teichmann. I don't remember that match. Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing I think it was Ash Barty she lost to at the beginning of the year in Adelaide. Here we go. Yeah, so she's losing Ash Barty. well, we all know Ash Barty and how good she was, especially at that point in the year. She's losing to Madison Keys. Okay, Madison Keys is ranking 87, but we know how it is with the certain players yo-yoing. I mean, this is probably the one that probably stood out for me as probably the real. I put a sad face. I did some notes and I just put losing to Wang in Australia and a sad face. It's probably the one that really stood out to me as being the big disappointment for me this year for her.
Yeah, that would probably be the biggest disappointment of a win, because a lot of people had her with her results that she had at Adelaide 1 and 2. They had her at least going to the 4th round, maybe 3rd round, second week of the major, and then she loses to Wang. I think Wang is a pretty tough matchup for her as well. And I think losing to Maddie Keys is not bad, because Maddie Keys wound up winning the title at that event. So, and Maddie Keys was in some really good form that week. I don't know what she did that week, but it was kind of insane. The form she came up with, I was like, Madison, who are you? Who is this? But yeah, that win to me at the Australia against Wang, that defeat is that's the one that sticks out to me the most.
It's the standout. I mean, that's a compliment in a way, that the rest of the year she's losing to very good players or players in very good moments. I mean, we then look at obviously Jessica Pegula. Anyone can win or lose against her. But look at this for a run. I mean, it's pretty good. She beat Shelby Rogers, Caroline Garcia, and Paula Badosa. Paula Badosa, I think, was her 5th top 10 win as well of her career. And this is in February this year, before losing to Maria Sakkari. And by the way, this is Maria Sakkari in a very different period for her career than she is now. Maria Sakkari was pretty good in the spring of this year. I mean, I think she got to 1 or 2 Masters finals as well. So, you know, losing to Maria Sakkari can happen. Simona Halep, she's 0-4 against Halep, which I wasn't aware of. Is there something in the matchup with Halep that doesn't seem to suit Coco Gauff?
I think Halep has I don't know exactly how to pinpoint this. I've discussed this a lot of times with people. I think Coco has the game to beat Halep. I mean, she can redirect pace if Halep decides to give her pace. She has a much more consistent, I would say, a better serve than, at least first serve, than Simona Halep. Her ground strokes are more powerful than Simona's, although Simona can turn up the pace as she can. I think a lot of it is just mental at this point. I'm not sure she's aware of the 0-4 record, but it feels like anytime she steps on the court with Simona Halep, she just doesn't bring her best game. And I think it's a mental block for her. And as soon as she has that breakthrough win over Halep, I don't know when it's going to come, but as soon as she gets that win, I think that mental block is going to go. So I don't think the tactical, the matchup is bad for her per se at the moment. I think a lot of it is mental. Going up against her, because she was the one that ended her dream run at Wimbledon, and then she just kept losing to her ever since. So I think a lot of it is just mental at this point.
Yeah, it'll come. But yeah, again, losing to Swiatek, and this is Swiatek in the middle of that unbelievable run that we talked about in Miami. I mean, if she's in a different half of the draw to Swiatek, she could be meeting her in a final, and it looks even better then, of course. Kazatkina, yeah, I guess that may be a little disappointing to go out as early as that in Stuttgart, but there we go. But then again, once we go back to Halep, I think Halep has beaten her 3 times this year, actually. So I think 3 of those 4 have all come this year. I could be wrong, could be twice, But yeah, she's just losing to really good players generally. I mean, Swiatek again, at this time in the final, of course, at Roland Garros. That was a very good run from her, by the way, not dropping a set until the final. Even Iga dropped a set on the way to get into the final. So, I mean, there's some really good straight sets wins there. I mean, obviously, bageling Marino there in the first round, amongst others.
Yeah, that was a really strong run for her. She didn't face a lot of seeds. The draw kind of opened up for her as the tournament went on. Mertens was the only seed before Iga that she faced. But I mean, honestly, Kaya Kanepi is always somebody that you don't want to face lurking around. She's known to be a seed killer. Van Uyck has killed some seeds along the way. I mean, Sloane Stephens is a former major champion. And then Italians are typically pretty decent on clay. So there were
bad semi-final though. It's not a bad semi-final though, is it? To be fair, no. I mean, if you're gonna, I know you said pretty good on clay, but Trevisan, yeah. I mean, you would think that's not a bad semi. I mean, you're right. You can get lucky in the draw elsewhere. You can be unlucky as well. I agree with Kanepi and Mertens, but maybe Trevisan in the semi-final is quite nice.
Yeah, Trevisan and score. She's probably one of the few Italians that struggles on clay. But I mean, that was a nice semifinal for her, especially trying to go through the run of Kaya, Alize, and Sloane, people who are very, very capable of taking out her. To get Trevisan in the semifinal, I think Trevisan in the beginning kind of pushed her, and then towards the end of that first set, it was all Coco, and then you saw the second set, it was 6-1. So I think that was a really good run. That stretch from the round of 32 to the quarterfinal really solidified that run for her. It gave her a lot of confidence, and then of course in the final she ran into the best player in the world. And
on her favorite, on her best,
on her favorite surface, it was destiny for Iga.
Yeah, exactly. It's. I mean, Iga's domination actually is getting a little Rafa-esque, but we're not going to talk about Rafa. We already said that. So okay, but I think you really made a good point about the consistency that she's managed. I mean, losing to Ons Jabeur here in Berlin, of course, that'll be on the grass, so that's no shame in that. Maybe Wimbledon a little bit disappointing going out in the third round to Anisimova, but I mean, I actually remember the first round that she had. She had some big troubles overcoming Roos in the first round, which kind of surprised me a little bit.
That surprised me a little bit too. But
I do remember this match actually because it was really tight in that third set.
Yeah, it was really tight in the third set. I think she was just tired from the run from Roland Garros. I mean, going from clay to grass so quickly, it takes a lot of time to get your feet wet and get your feet under you in the movement on grass. So I think that's kind of why she struggled a little bit in that first round. And then you see the next round, like she did 6-2, 6-3. So she kind of got her feet under her. And then losing to Anisimova, I think Anisimova at the moment right now is just a touch above Coco. Just a touch as far as matchups. Amanda, her power is very underrated. It's very sneaky power. She can turn it on or not off. I think the loss looks worse because Amanda lost to Halep, who can barely get like a 70-mile-per-hour serve in. So I think that loss looks a little worse because of who Amanda lost to the next round and how poor Halep looked the next round. But that was a very winnable match for Coco. I just think Amanda peaked that day. And there's just not much you can do when somebody peaks.
So you talked about consistency, but we also talked about maybe running out of steam on a couple of occasions. I noticed she's not played since New York. Is there any particular reason for that? Is she? I remember she had some issues going into New York as well, into the US Open, where she obviously had an injury. Was it in where was it? Was it in Canada or?
It was in Cincinnati.
Cincinnati,
she tweaked her ankle.
Before
against Pliskova. Yeah, she had to pull out. It wasn't severe because obviously she played the US Open. But I think I'm not too sure what her schedule looks like. I think she's been doing a lot of promo. she's been doing a lot of promo and stuff like that. And she's 18 now, so I believe she's past the limits of tour events that she can play. But I think she's just taking a well-deserved break at the moment and doing some promo. I'm not sure.
She's just broken into the top 10 at 18 years and 183 years old. I think 183 days old. So I think that's becoming, it's according to this, the youngest woman ever to break into the top 10. Is that right? Or to debut in the top 10 since Nicole Vaidisova, who I must say, I'm not sure who she was. I do apologize to the Vaidisova household for not being aware of who she was. But I mean, this is a nice landmark for her to really stamp her consistent year, as you said.
Yeah, this is the results that she had this year are a top 10 player year. She really only lost to the players you kind of expected her to lose to. She lost to Iga. She lost to Maria when she was in pretty decent form. She lost to Caroline Garcia, who was having an unbelievable run during that American hard court swing. She doesn't have a bad loss this season, and she racked up a doubles title. She may have a singles title right now at the moment, but I'm in the camp of yes, you may not have a title, but if you're making runs and you're not losing to number 179 in the world every time you step on a court, that's a good year for me. Putting
I
up
agree.
consistent results when you need to do and execute when you need to. She's done that. She's done that exceedingly and above. Now it's just getting a run to get another title under her belt.
I had her in my bracket getting to the final in New York. I had her losing to Iga as it turned out, but that didn't work out because of the defeat to Garcia. I think before the tournament I had her getting to the final, but the closer that match got to her quarterfinal result in New York, the closer it got, the more I had doubts over her winning that quarterfinal that she had. What did you think about her at the US Open? The quarterfinal defeat, was it a bit flat? Was there, because by the way, before then, I thought she was mightily impressive. I remember her having a few issues, of course, with the serve, a couple of double faults. That was a theme that was sort of building before the US Open as well. But nevertheless, I remember saying in commentary or a moment where it was like, you know what, I think she'd rather not serve at the moment. There was a match, I think she was trying to serve out, or it might have been a set she was trying to serve out. She couldn't do it, and then she just broke again in the next game. And I think that may well have won the match for her. And I just remember thinking she doesn't even want to serve at the moment because there were some sort of maybe some confidence issues there. Am I being a bit harsh, or what are your thoughts?
No, I don't think you're being a bit harsh. The double faults are an issue. They've been an issue for a little bit now. I think when she protects her first serve well, she has a little bit more confidence in her second serve. And I think in that quarterfinal against Garcia, I think Garcia's return position really affected Coco because I think a lot of the time Caroline was inside the baseline. So she was challenging Coco to hit her spots, and she was rushing Coco on her first ball after serve a lot, which allowed Caroline to get in more favorable position. So I think in that particular match, Caroline's return position really affected her on the serve. And then I think Coco right now is at the part where, like, if her serve breaks down, kind of like every part of her game breaks down, which is not every part of her game breaks down, but she kind of like and gets her in her head a lot when her serve doesn't work well because her first serve is just so good for a young age that she wants to do all she can to protect it. And she didn't really do that all that well, mainly because of her opponent's ridiculous return position. So I don't think she was necessarily flat, in my opinion. I think Caroline just played just really that much better. Caroline was executing at a high level at that point in time. And she was on a little bit of a win streak. So I think she ran into an informed opponent and just didn't bring her best game. And losing to 17 in the world, not terrible. That's, you kind of maybe want to win that one as a top 10 player. But honestly, when you run into Caroline Garcia and when she's on, she's pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, and she certainly was in August and September of this year, I would suggest. In fact, she was for most of the summer, Garcia. I think she came unstuck against Ons Jabeur for slightly different reasons, but that's for a different time. What would represent, more progress, a good 2023, for example, for Coco?
I think I mentioned it before, but for me, I think she has to break through and get a title. For me personally, she's had these consistent runs, so she can go deep into a tournament. She has the game to be consistent enough to go against a tournament, and her new coach, his name is slipping my mind at the moment, has really worked on her forehand, making sure it can be an attacking forehand, and she can use it to, not only defend, but to attack and hit all her spots and kind of set herself up for other shots. So I think the attention to detail that she is paying attention to her ground strokes and tactically improving how she uses them is going to help her set up herself for a title run. And I think a title run for her will be just so monumental for her confidence. She's pretty confident now, but I think it would just be so great for her confidence going into next season, later on into 2023 and then into 2024, which I don't even want to think about that right now. I don't want to think about 2024. But yeah, I think a title run is vital for her because it kind of shows that the work that she's been putting in has paid off. getting to lift the trophy. And she's done it in doubles this year, but that singles trophy, all the work that she has been putting in singles and doubles to help her singles game, getting that run and getting that title will be very helpful for her.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the other thing I sort of touched upon earlier as well. I mean, when I think of landmark victories for her, the first one and the biggest one I think of is still Venus Williams, and that's not bad. I mean, obviously that was the one that made us all sit up and take notice. I think I may have been at Wimbledon the day it happened, or it might have been a couple of days after I was there. But that's the one that still stands out for me in her career. If we could have a few sort of more landmark victories, for example, on the way to a Masters 1000 win, that would be very welcome. I guess there'll be a little bit of pressure at her Roland Garros. The draw will obviously have a big influence on how that pans out. Is she in the same half or the same quarter as Iga? Solidifying the top 10 ranking, of course, would be nice. And a major. I mean, I did see that we had already some of these wild predictions for next year, and people who haven't won a slam, who would you like to see win a slam? And to be honest with you, when I mentioned the clay question earlier, I should have known, because I think in your list next to the croissant was Coco Gauff's name in hope or belief, or a bit of both, in terms of her chances at Roland Garros next year.
I believe she can do it. She moves too well on clay to not at least get a Roland Garros title sometime in her career. I think I jinxed her by saying it's going to happen next year. But I would love to see it happen at Roland Garros, because she moves well on clay. And I mean, it's just phenomenal how well she can play on clay. And I think the development of that forehand and making sure it can be attacking and helping her end rallies a little bit quicker on that surface is going to do her nothing but it's going to do her a world of good on that surface.
My immediate instinct is for American players at Roland Garros is that it hasn't really been a happy hunting ground. I think Agassi obviously won there on the men's side, but I'm just wondering who the last American woman to win the French Open was. I mean, when I think
it was Serena in 2015.
Oh, of course it would have been, yeah. But of course it was. I mean, it's not bad having your weaker slam where I think you win it 3 times, but
yeah.
But it was her weaker slam. It is. I mean, I guess there aren't too many clay courts in North America. Is that the case?
There are not too many clay courts in America, which is why I think Americans tend to struggle on that surface, because they don't typically play on it and they don't know how to move on it, which is really surprising that Coco can move so well on it and she can adjust onto it. I don't know what type of work that she's put out. Well, she did do some juniors, so she would have had to put some work on that end. But I think a lot of the struggles that Americans have had on that surface is partially because they don't get exposed to it a lot and they don't really play on it a lot. And I think some Americans have an aversion to clay, and American clay, because we do have a couple clay courts in America and clay court tournaments, but American clay is very different from European clay.
Got it.
And if you think American clay is the same as European clay, you're stupid. I'm just going to say that right now. You're stupid. I think American clay typically plays more like a slow, fast court because of how it's packed. So, think of a Miami court. Whereas clay, European clay is really slow and it's really dogged down. And you have to have rally tolerance, and especially on the men's side, the men don't have rally tolerance.
Yeah, right.
they serve and play. They are some serve bots. You cannot serve bots on clay. That's just not. You gotta move your feet, my dude.
Yeah.
So I think that's
I think
the reasons.
I think of the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, the players that I grew up watching, if you like, especially from the US anyway. Your Pete Samprases, your Andy Roddicks. They're just doing, as soon as the French Open comes along, they're doing nothing. I mean, John McEnroe, of course, got to a French Open final and I think lost it quite dramatically. He might have been 2 sets to love up, but that's just before my time. But mostly the Americans, men and women, even Serena, as I said, it's her best slam. But I think even Serena's movement compared to how it was on all the other surfaces where it was just legendary was more compromised on the clay courts of Paris. But she just seems to be a natural, Coco. I mean, as you say, I don't think she would have played much as a kid growing up, albeit she did win the juniors there. Maybe there's a story I just don't know about, but she just seems so natural on the surface.
Yeah, she just really does. She's just, I think she's a great mover, and she can, that helps her a lot on all surfaces, being a good mover, but especially on clay, you have to be able to move on clay. I think that was like one of Maria Sharapova's biggest issues going back to that time, which if you can't move, you can't really play well on clay. So I think a lot of her game just relies on her movement. And I think because she's developed her movement so well, she doesn't have as nearly hard of a time maybe her other American compatriots adjusting to clay, because her movement is like is one of her backbones of her game.
Absolutely. Hanya has a question for you. She has a soft spot for a certain Tunisian player. So she
I wonder who that is.
In 2023, if they meet in a quarterfinal, who's winning at Roland Garros?
Oh, don't hate me, Hanya.
It's a long way away. I mean, a lot can go on. There's a lot of tennis to be played between now and then. But listen, we're living in a fantasy world, so go for it. You're going to go Coco, right?
I'm going to go Coco. I think the biggest separation between the two of them right now is the mental side of things. Yes, Ons has made 2 slam finals, but I think there are times where Ons can get into her own head, and I said Coco can do the same thing too as well. But I think Coco, an underrated part of her game is problem solving, and getting out of hairy situations. You saw it against Ruse in that Wimbledon first round when she was struggling and she wasn't really having the best day, I think, on serve and on the court, but she found a way to win. Whereas Jabeur, I think sometimes when she gets challenged, she doesn't really kind of click it on and find ways to win. Like if her plan A doesn't work, she doesn't really try to find a plan B. And that's not a slight against her. That's something that some people have to develop. So right now I would go Coco. At the moment, I think Coco's game is a touch better than Oz. I'm so sorry, Hanya.
By the way, Hanya's she's trying to change the surface now. Well, she's going to keep going. And I think on grass, Ons would be the slight. Is that fair to say that if they met on clay tomorrow, Coco would be the slight favorite, but if they meet on grass, Ons would be the slight favorite? Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I'll throw her a little bone. I'll throw her a little bone.
Yeah, throw a bone. I mean, my okay, this is not going to please Hanya, but it will please you, Ashlee, and I'm not just saying that because you're here right now. If you said to me, who is winning the most majors of those two, I'm going Coco. I mean, I'm doing that because of their age, of course, and the possibilities, but I think Coco has a couple in her. By the way, this could get clipped in a few years, and Ons is on 10 majors and Coco's still on 0. Who knows? With the internet, unfortunately, we are committing ourselves with all these brackets and predictions. But if I had to make a prediction right now, who is winning most majors? Hanya may never talk to me again after this, but I am going slightly towards Coco on that one.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. I think age is a big factor now. Ons Jabeur could just go into beast mode next year and pull off a calendar Grand Slam, and we're like, well, that's kind of crazy. But I think at the moment I would say Coco, mainly because of the age. She has a little bit more time to, be a little bit of a late bloomer and kind of burst onto. Okay. Bye, Hanya. So sorry. Yeah, I think Coco, I think age is a big factor into that. I'm not sure about Ons's age at the moment, but
29 maybe
29, 18 versus 29. I mean,
do the math.
Roger Federer played until he was 40, so who knows?
Ons is 28, by the way, just turned 28. But
28. Yeah. Okay. She has a little bit of time. She can rattle off a couple majors, get a one foot in, get a little rosewater dish, But Coco has more time to get like 5 rosewater dishes. I don't know. Maybe. I'm not putting that as a prediction. No, don't say that's a prediction. Don't do that.
Actually, it's been wonderful. Have you got any final broader thoughts on Coco? I mean, we did touch a bit on some of her stuff away from the court. I think she's really grown in so many facets in the last 12, 18 months that we sometimes maybe pick up the media and we're not just seeing her her comments and her thoughts for things about tennis, also broader issues as well. I guess we should give a nod in that direction too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think being an African American, I think there's like some sort of responsibility that's put on to these athletes to kind of be socially aware and conscious of what's going on around them. And sometimes that can be a detriment. Sometimes that could be helpful. And it's worked out for Coco because she's been able to, talk about issues and bring awareness to issues that typically wouldn't have gotten attention. And she's done it in a way that is like constructive. She creates constructive conversation. She gives constructive input. And then she's also, going out and trying to learn and educate herself on some of these issues, Black Lives Matter, gun violence in America, because that's a thing.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
That's a little bit of an issue. But, being that socially conscious and, being so young in the spotlight, where all your words can kind of be taken out of context or be taken for not what they really are supposed to be, and to still want to genuinely help people and to be genuinely mature and able to give mature responses to certain things that are certain issues that are really dark. It's really helpful for her because now people have kind of they have a young voice in tennis. And I think tennis has been kind of away from certain issues that happen in other countries, mainly because I think it's still very much a European sport. But not albeit with the center of tennis now shifting kind of over to America. I think the tennis world still has been disconnected from certain social issues. Definitely. And I am a proponent of everything is connected, politics, sports, all that stuff. They're all interconnected like this.
Me too.
And to be so young and to be willing to talk about these issues when it's so easy to just be like, nah, I don't want to talk about it. I just want to talk tennis. I think speaks to her character and speaks to the people that raised her, so her parents that raised her, and just who she is as a person and who she wants to be as a person in tennis, and just kind of the environment that she wants to bring into tennis.
Listen, where there's people involved, there are societal issues involved, whether you want to call it politics or you want to call it something else or you want to call it rights or otherwise. I mean, I'm sorry, but if you're going to put 20,000 people into a stadium and get 10 million people to watch on TV, well, you got people. So you're going to have topics, and these are all relevant. And whether it be increasing pay for some of the lower ranked players, or whether it be standing up for societal issues that you highlighted before, there's no reason why you shouldn't have a voice. But that's probably, again, for perhaps a more broader podcast. Listen, regarding Coco on the court, I think it's been a joy to watch her this year. I think you made some good points about her on the defense, but I also like her offensively too. I mean, you mentioned the first serve. If we could get the forehand sort of more consistent, if you like, I think the sky's the limit.
Yes, for sure. I think the serve, just how powerful she is always going to be prone to double faults because she's not going to take that much off of her second serve. It's just how she manages it going forward into her career. But I think right now the priority is that she needs to fix the forehand and to make it more of an attacking shot rather than just a very passive shot, and to help her set up her better ground stroke, which is her backhand. I think the sky's the limit for her. I think you saw it. I mean, she made a major final when her forehand was still very much struggling. And then she ran into somebody that could attack that forehand. Yeah. With a forehand so I think that run indicated that maybe if we tweak the forehand a little bit, maybe we can see something here. And you saw how effective it was during her U.S. Open run to the quarterfinals. You know, she was very good at attacking with it, setting up the backhand with it, setting up volleys, drop shots and stuff like that with that slices.
I think her new coach may be a guy called Diego Moyano. I'm not sure. I've just Googled it and done it. Maybe he isn't the coach. If he isn't, I apologize, Diego. But whether you're the coach or not, you're more than welcome to join us on Talking Tennis, and perhaps we'll get you back on as well, Ashlee, to have a chat with Diego about whether he is or isn't the coach of Coco Gauff. I think he is. Google suggests he is anyway, but sometimes Google can be wrong.
I believe that is the coach. I believe it is. His name is escaping me at the moment. I'll remember when it's like 8:00 at night.
Yeah, no worries. Anyway, listen, Ashlee, it's been great having you on board. I'm sure we'll have you again soon. Your knowledge and your enthusiasm for the sport are obvious and apparent, and it's been great. Thanks for coming by.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Ashlee, take care. Have a good day. To the rest of the tennis world, thanks for stopping by.